Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. This is a podcast to inspire, uplift, show forth the love of God, and help usher in the spiritual awakening. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, Jay Spillers, author and teacher. I have a guest today. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Time Out Papalitau Mua. I'm
Mm-hmm.
an author and I recently released a book about the scientific nature of the Bible. I'm a Polynesian. I'm from the South Pacific, from the island called Samoa. I currently live in California and I was born a Christian to the Methodist Church and I've been a seeker of trying to find my answers to a lot of questions in the Bible. So my journey took me here, and God is good. Let us meet with your host here, Jay Spillers.
Yeah. So you have like a special story about the three wise men that visited Jesus?
Yes, yes. I have a good Christmas story, but it's not a kind that you hear from every day. It is part of my claims in a book that I recently released, titled "The Magnificence of the Three." It's about the scientific nature of the Bible. Uh, the book is about God, the atom, and emotions. The atom is uh, is this material that everything in the universe is made from. So that's what the book is about. And I recently submitted it to. It was published in on 9/11. A few months ago, 3 months ago, and I recently submitted it to a competition here called the Southern California Book Festival,
Mm-hmm.
and I end up as an honorable mention. Now, I was really
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. I sent the book in the last day of the competition. I didn't think there. It was on. I sent it December 11th, and this was December 20th. Uh, they sent me the email talking about I listing me as an honorable mention.
Mm-hmm.
I was really surprised. Whoever read it, the book is 600 pages. So whoever read it, you know, this is 9 days from the day they received the book to the day they sent me the email that it was done. That's 9 days. So whoever read it nonstop. So
Mm-hmm.
and I was really shocked and surprised, but man, I was so elated. And the reason why, because the stuff I'm claiming in the book is something that you never heard of before. Something that is alien to the community. Uh, after I published the book, I started doing promotion and then started talking to people online, from the Jews to Christians, and I found out that a lot of these people, they don't find anything scientific about the Bible. I was really surprised. Like, I wasn't into social media before until I do Facebook just to talk to family and stuff, but I wasn't out there watching YouTube videos or all this stuff until after I did the book. I wrote a book, and I found out from a lot of these people that there's nothing. They don't believe somebody somewhere sometimes made a decision that there's nothing scientific about the Bible, and there's millions of people supporting that theory now. So I'm coming with something different, something. So I was really surprised. Like, this is why I was so happy when I got the email that somebody understood, somebody read it and understood exactly what I'm saying. So it was a great relief to me. So, anyways, the book is about the atom. Uh, I have two basic claims in in the book that when God said He created heaven and earth, He was very. I'm claiming that He was fully aware of the atom. The atom is this thing, invisible thing that all matters in the universe are made from rocks to trees, the planets, the sun, the air that we breathe. Our bodies are full of atoms. So when so what I had to do was when I can you is there any way you can put on the slides? Let me stop. Put it on the slide so I can.
Oh, yeah.
Explain.
Are you looking for a devotional that will radically transform your walk with Christ and revolutionize the world at the same time? Check out my latest book, Walk as Children of the Light. This book focuses on everything you need to be fully equipped and discipled in Christ: prayer, meditation, scripture, love, gratitude, and much, much more. Available on Amazon, 5-star rating.
Okay. So this is the atom. This is the image of the atom. So the atom has 3 particles. When I first saw it in my research, I was like 5 years into writing a book about 10 pieces of evidence about the scientific nature of the Bible. And then I saw the atom. For some reason I was researching about water. I think on where water came from in the 2nd verse of Genesis. I think that's when the atom came through. And when I first saw it, I'm like, right away I saw it. I'm like, why hasn't anybody seen this? Because here it is. In this thing, you have, the science just came out with the thing and labeled this thing. One of the particles of the atom is a negative electron. The other one's a positive proton, and then there's a neutron. So I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, what if we're looking at because this is what God, the relationship between God and man, is just defined right here by the atom's particles. God holding on to good, the positive, and then the evil electrons running around in circles around God and good. So you're looking at so I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is almost like what the snake told Eve, that when you get knowledge, you're going to be like God who knows good and evil. So you're looking at a structure right here, because what we've been teaching and what they've been teaching us in the Bible is you have to be good means positive. Positive and good is always, replace the positive means good, negative means evil, means bad and evil. So when I look at the structure of the atom, I'm looking at him like, man, there's something here. So I did the research, and that's how so I had to change the book, and that's how this book ended up. So to understand what happens in the meaning of the gifts by the wise men, you have to understand. You have to begin right here in Genesis, in creation. So my first claim is that God was fully aware of the atom, and when He created Adam, He designed Adam just like He designed the atom. So He imitated the design of the atom in creating Adam. So my second claim is that after Adam and Eve were created, the rest of the Bible was stories about the tools that we need to develop our brain. So now you look at the structure of the atom. So I call the neutron. This is a God particle. The positive proton as a good particle, and the negative electron as the evil particle. We go to the next slide. Oh, this is supposed to be a
Okay.
CP4, but it's okay. Okay. So the title of the book is called "The Magnificence of the Three." I got the title from a quote by Nikola Tesla. This guy was a mechanical engineer, and electrical engineer is supposed to be a genius. And I read up on him, and man, this guy had everything. But there was something, he was stuck on this number 3. What he said was a quote by Nikola Tesla was, if you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, you would have the key to the universe. So I'm making claim that I believe I found the magnificence of the 3. And that magnificence of 3 is the atom's particles. So that's how. So as I go through, as I research through, I start finding these things are structured, like a lot of these fundamental elements of the design of heaven and earth, especially the human body. So each of these things, scientists now come around and mention it, and they're always in threes. Let's say I will show you the neurons later. The neurons is a brain cell. There's only three kinds of neurons. There's the motor neurons, interneurons, and sensory neurons. The brain, the fetus brain, is when it begins forming, it's divided into three sections: the hindbrain, midbrain, and forebrain. It's always three. Our DNA has three. There's three of them. To make it work, there's DNA, RNA, and proteins. There are three states of matter: solid, gas, and liquid. Water is what NASA people call the molecule of life. And Jesus spoke about it as, unless one is born of water and spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. Water has only three particles. So these are like simple examples of, there's a bunch of them I list in the book, but these are simple examples of how the of how this number three pops up here in the structure of the basic structure, fundamental structure of a human life. So you go over the Genesis, you go over the Bible, and it's the same thing. When the snake told Eve, once you get knowledge, you're going to be a God who knows good and evil. So there's a three relationship. There's God, good and evil, just like the atom is. There's God, positive and negative. There's a neutron, the positive and the negative. In the biblical sense, in the biblical translation, there's God, good and evil. So in Genesis, right after Adam was created, in verse Genesis 1:27, God cited male and female, he created them. So there's been confusion about that, but that's the first symbol, the transfer of the atoms designed to man to creating Adam was that. There was God and his opposites of man, male and female. It wasn't God, the labels of positive and negative was later on. These are scientific labels that came later on, but God made it simple. He made it the opposite, male and female. So, for another example is the Garden of Eden had opposite. There's a garden as a relationship of three. There's a garden, and then two opposite trees: tree of knowledge, which is a tree of death, and there's a tree of life. So there's a three relationship. The garden also has another symbol. There's a garden, and there's a cherubim guard, and a swirling sword of life. So these are simple things that the Ark of the Covenant was designed with three boxes, and that include the men that brought the gifts. There's also three of them, three gifts. And Jesus was crucified with three prisoners, and he rose on the third day. So these are all things involved in number three that I'm providing as evidence of why the three is magnificent, because it's a basic structure of heaven and earth. So
Yeah,
to get there,
what's interesting too is like, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I don't know if you've ever heard of sacred geometry. I don't know too much about it, but they have in sacred geometry, they've got the cube, which is like a three-dimensional triangle, right. And then of course we live in a three-dimensional universe. So yeah, and obviously the Trinity. But go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, it's one of those. As I look through the thing, I've seen all these things, and they look, they look kind of weird, just like you're saying right now, because you don't understand it. But some people understand it. You know what I mean? But it involves a number three, like Tesla. Mm-hmm. I found out when he goes to his place, he walks around the block 3 times, then goes in the room. He died in a hotel in New York in number 33. His room was number 33. It's one of those things that, but this guy was a genius, though, So anyway, I'm using a bunch of theories to support my claims, and the two I'm going to use right here to explain how we get to the gifts is the first theory is called a triune brain theory. I know the audience gonna some of them understand this thing, and it's supposedly been debunked as the word they use. It's not real. It's like it's not true. But it's done by evolutionists, you know. So the triune brain theory is that the first unit of the brain is called a reptilian brain. Was first began was the reptilians that created that brain, and then came the second brain unit. It's called a limbic unit, or it's called the emotional brain. This is where all the emotions are housed, and that was developed by mammalians. And then the new brain is called a neocortex, or the Weiss brain. It's called a Weiss brain. Was done by us, by you know, that's the modern brain that we're still developing today. So the theory is the brain was divided into 3 different sections. So, but even though I'm still using it, even though a lot of doctors are using it because it's simple to explain the brain through this triune brain theory, you know. But I'm arguing, I'm claiming in the book that you know, all this science, they compete against one another. You know, everybody's trying to outdo one another with their theories, and that's what evolution is trying to do too. You know, they're trying to take over the determination where we came from and all that stuff. So the triune brain theory become a victim of that. But I'm presenting the evidence that the reason why I'm using it is because God left the evidence in the human body. You know, and here's a simple example. You know, you can look it up, but it's a simple example that when in a fetus, I think you were like 6 weeks, it forms a brain. And then the brain is divided brain divides itself into 3 sections. Okay, that's what you call this is the triune brain theory. This is the an image of that triune brain theory. There's a reptilian brain, this white section right here, was supposedly built by reptiles, lizards, and you know, all kinds of reptiles. And then this is the emotional brain, the limbic unit. This is developed by, you know, later on developed and added on. And then the last brain is the white brain. That's the one we're developing today. So what they say is that was because you know, they divided the brain into 4 sections, what the evolutionists did. But what my argument is that I support the triune brain theory because God left the evidence. That evidence is in the fetus. When the fetus brain first develops, it divides not into 4 sections or 5 sections or 10 sections. It divides into 3 sections. This is an example of the fundamental structure of the biological of the human body, as God, as you know, is following the design of the atom. All these things in 3 is following the design of the atom. They are little pieces of evidence God left in the record of both in the body and in the Bible, that everything He designed is in imitation of the atom. So the second, that's one of the theory that will come later on, as I explain the story. The second scientific theory that I'm using in the book that applies here in our story it's called a social brain hypothesis. To put it simply, you know, there's an argument about how we separated ourselves from monkeys and animals in our brain wise, how we ended up flying to the moon and none of the other animals could evolve, you know, like evolution, like they're supposed to or something, you know. But the social brain hypothesis is that we separated the way we're smarter and how our brain got developed was because we have more people in our tribes. You know, we have more social connections. I think the number that this guy is saying is that the average person has 150 people in these circles. So the more the people you have in a circle, the more the brain expands. The reason why the brain expanded because it needs to expand to control how the social behavior of everyone around you. You know, how to navigate through social behavior, that kind of stuff. That's why there was a need by the brain to develop itself. And so that's what pretty much the basis of the social brain hypothesis. So those 2 I'm going to use here with the atom, to explain the story. So I'm to me, the Bible is also divided in three sections. I'm marking that. The first section is from Genesis 1 to the flood, which is Genesis 8. This is the first. This is God presented that the stories about the reptilian brain. This is a funny thing because the characteristic of a reptilian brain, according to the doctors, is pretty much similar to the behavior of people that were from that time period to the flood, from Genesis 1 to the flood. So that's the brain unit I referred to as the reptilian unit. That this was the first 10 generations developed this brain unit. The second brain unit, which is the limbic unit or the emotional brain, started by Noah all the way to the last book of the Old Testament. So this is where it was during this period when the slavery happened, the enslavement of Abraham's descendants happened. What I say in there, the reason why they were enslaved was God wanted them to develop emotions for expanding their tribe. So that's where the limbic unit comes in. The last unit is a smart brain or the wise brain. Now mark this because this I'm not even making this up. All this stuff just fall right in line. They call it a wise brain. The scientists call it a wise brain, and it just happened that this was the brain. The new brain starts from Matthew to Revelation. So the Bible is divided into three sections, and each section correlates to each brain unit that was as the characteristic of each brain unit as explained by our scientists. Are you following along so far? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Are you following along so far?
Yeah.
Okay, the triune. So we've gone through that social brain hypothesis. So we discussed a little bit of that. All right. Now, to understand the brain, so what you're looking at right here is the images of a neuron, right? This is a brain cell.
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like to you? The shape.
The shape, is it kind of like a tree?
Exactly.
Or...
Exactly. This is how God designed it. Make it simple. He designed it just like a tree. And you know what we call it? The brain neuron. But you know what God called it? The tree of knowledge. The only thing this thing and the tree outside, the only difference between them is this thing collects memories. And this is how we learn how we collect knowledge is this thing. This is what I'm claiming is what you call what the tree of knowledge God called in the Bible. That's the only difference between this thing and the tree outside is that it collects memories and store our knowledge. So this thing also structured, included in the Trinity design. It only has three kinds: sensory neuron, motor neuron, and interneurons. All right. So this is what I claim as a tree of knowledge. Now, there are billions of those things in our brain. Billions. This is how they pretty much design in this is how they live in. This is a neurologist design, artist design of what they look like, how they interact in there. In the middle here, you see this to look just like trees. This is how they wired over here on my right side. Oh, this is how you see how they connected their roots and how they connected. This is why they call it. Scientists call it a neuron forest. I'm claiming this is the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden God was referring to was the human brain. This is how it is wired, how they wired. Now I have a whole lot more explanation in the book, but it's just to show you the images because these are really it's part of the story. So so each brain unit development begins with three, with the element of three. The reptilian unit, let's go back to the reptilian brain unit. There you go. The reptilian brain unit was developed when Eve went for knowledge. So in a conversation between Eve and the snake told Eve, if you eat the fruit, the tree of knowledge, you're going to be like God, who knows good and evil. So this is a signal that the human's brain were really beginning separation from the animals. This is where the separation began. So the scientists are looking for that point of separation, but the Bible cited it here. This was the first point of separation. Now it's a lot bit more explanation in the book, but this is where man and beast separated from, according to God, was when Eve chose to go for knowledge. So involving in this is the number three. There's God, good and evil. The good and evil represented emotions. This is just a little, good and evil represented emotions, but I won't get into that right now. It's a little bit bigger. We may not have enough time. So the limbic unit starts here with Noah and his sons. Remember, after the flood, everybody died. Noah had 3 sons. So the 3 sons of Noah was the beginning, was also another marker. I call these things as markers for each brain unit. It was about to begin developing. So each brain unit starts with number 3. It's just like God, when God, good and evil, that began the separation of man from beast. That's the marker for the reptilian brain. We come to the emotional brain, or the limbic unit, the second unit of the brain. God left this clue. Noah had 3 sons. So there was a blessing in there. Noah did about his, he gave to his sons. And each of them represented a particle of the atom. There's Ham, who was going to be a servant to his brothers. I'm explaining that the servant it's like it's just like the negative electron. You see how the negative electron runs around in circles around the atom on the top, right? So that's what Canaan was assigned, was as the negative electron. Japheth was a positive proton, and Shem represented a neutral neutron. So all these 3, this is the meaning of the blessings of this that Noah gave to his sons. They represented, each one represented a characteristic of the atom. Japheth and Shem has a tent, and in this tent, Japheth lives. So we know that the neutron and the positive proton lives inside the atom. They separate themselves from the negative electron. So that's the meaning of that. So the second brain unit began with the atom as another marker. This marker included the 3 sons. And all Ham did here was explain that God did was place another marker, again implicating the atom here in the beginning stages of developing the second brain. So, and then, as I was saying earlier, the third brain started with Matthews. This is where the marker God left there was the 3 gifts given by the wise men. So this is the marker God left there for to let us know that this is a new brain, and it just happened to be the men that came and brought the gifts. They were not sheep farmers or sheep herders or farmers or any other skill, they were wise men. And it's just coincident that the last brain unit, our scientists later on came in and guess what they call it? The smart brain. So these are the three brain units.
Mhm.
The importance of understanding this is this separation of because each brain unit has characteristics, and all these characteristics are in are recorded in the Bible. So let's go to the next because the New Testament we know, people have like this is a covenant with the Gentiles, and I support that. And here's the reason why. Now we can go back. I'm going to explain it this way. The question that unlocked all this for me was, but it ended up including the land Israel God had promised Abraham. Is when God assigned Israel that they were going to be priests. The question that one of my questions. I have a lot of questions about the biblical structure, about how they explain how, a lot of them don't make sense to me. But that's just one of them. God assigned Israel to be priests. The question for me has been is, who was Israel supposed to be priests to? Remember, God they gave them a promised land. They say, this is your land. And then assigned them as priests. But who were they supposed to be priests to? What's your opinion on that?
Well, they're supposed to be the light to the nations, to the Gentiles. So they're supposed to basically teach the Gentiles the ways of God. Is that what you're talking about?
Thank you. That's what they were. They were not. But the thing is, God gave them this land. So there's a confusion there. And there's a confusion there. If they gave them this land, how are they supposed to be priests to the rest of the world? How are they supposed to be the light to the Gentiles if they're stuck on this piece of land? So what God did was told him, because there's all. Well, I don't want to go deep in conversation, but because that's most of it is all of it is in the book anyhow. But in Leviticus 26, God had told him that if you worship idols, I'm going to take the land from you. You're going to be my people in your enemy lands, but I'm going to take the land from you. And God did that. First, God took the Ark of the Covenant. Next, Babylonians came in there and destroyed Jerusalem. Israel didn't believe, the prophets didn't believe that what God told them in Leviticus was a joke. So they tried to rebuild Jerusalem. And guess what? God let another pagan tribe come in and destroy Jerusalem for the second time. So this is why the gifts are very, very relevant in the beginning of the new brain, developing a new brain. So God came back. My argument is this is why God returned. He came back as a son. And again, involved the characteristics between the differences between God the Old Testament and God the New Testament is the opposite of each other. You see what I'm saying? That's why one of the questions, why are people all atheists and non-believers always say, why is God the Old Testament different from the New Testament? New Testament is a lot forgiving. God the Old Testament killed a lot of people. But this is how God has structured the atom. All these things involve the atoms, because now you have opposite attract from the Old Testament to the New Testament. God, they're just opposite of each other. It's just like the atom. Atom has opposite particles. So that's part of the argument. Differences. Answer my that's one of my questions too. So when God returned as a man, the first thing that began, this guys came in. The wise men from the east came in with these three gifts. I look at the gifts and what they have in common is the temple. All three of them were part of the temple. The gold was a gold furniture, frankincense and myrrh. They were oiled in the temple. So when the wise men came and gave them back to God, to Jesus, my argument is that this was a simple and a signal to the arrival of the Gentiles. That God was all the gifts that God had took the land, took the ark already. And now the final is because the second temple is going to be destroyed. These gifts were meant to be that destruction is coming. That God had took back all these gifts that was once given to Israel because the new covenant is about to begin. And that new covenant, the priests are going to be included, are going to be the new covenant with the Gentiles. The Gentiles are going to be the extent of that. It's going to be the extent of that tribe, of God's tribe. And this is why God returned, was the inclusion of Gentiles, because there was a need to develop the brain further. This is why the wise man came, marked that the new brain is going to be the wise brain. It's going to be developed, and it's going to be done by Gentiles. The bigger, remember the theory that the social brain hypothesis we talked about earlier. The bigger the brain, the bigger the tribe. It is no coincidence that the arrival that within 2,000 years we have people on the moon. Evolution say we've been here for 1 million years. What they got show for it? Nothing. Paintings on the wall or cave walls, but it's just a coincidence that God returned in 2,000 years ago, and there's an explosion of knowledge. The wise brain just exploded. It exploded because the bigger the tribe, that's what the social brain hypothesis is. The bigger the tribe, the bigger the brain. This is what the meaning of the gifts. Everything that was given to Israel was done because they failed. They failed in the job. So God came back and say, we're going to include Gentiles now because the brain has to be developed to what he was supposed to be. And that's what God came back and this the meaning of this of the gifts is what God gave in developing the second unit brain unit. The limbic brain unit, it was done, it was over. The new brain was about to start. And this is what the meaning of these three gifts is. It's the end. Because God had took everything else from Israel, and the Gentile, this is going to be the new covenant. The Gentiles going to be included. They're going to be priests in the new world. So that kind of like a summary of, it's a lot more in detail in the book, but this is kind of like a summary of what I discussed in the book so far. And so, but that's the story, my Christmas story anyhow. But that's the meaning of it. It was God took back everything that he gave Israel. So when Jesus even told him before the temple, while he was here, before he was crucified, is that, this temple is going to be destroyed. So, but this began here with this thing. There's a lot more evidence of the new covenant. We included baptism and all that is included, discussed a lot more further in the book. But that's the meaning of that's my meaning of how the meaning of the three gifts. It just happened. The people that brought, they were wise people, So this is just one of those pieces of evidence. And then our scientists came over and coincidentally, I don't know whether they were influenced by the Bible or what, but they coincidentally called the new brain, the new cortex, as a smart brain. That's what they call it, the smart brain. It's just coincidence that the people that came and gave gifts to God when he came back, they were wise men. So those are little knickknacks that I'm supporting. I'm arguing, supporting my claims.
Well, does the three gifts itself of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, do they have specific meaning themselves?
Oh no, look, the gold, because everything in the tabernacle was made of gold. Now, here's the funny thing: frankincense and myrrh, these oils, they have two. There were two conditions on it. If anyone used it for no reason at all, for their personal use or something, the punishment is they were going to be cut off from their people. This is what these two things have in common, and it's really real because I'm using that as a signal because of the punishment. The punishment, the person who used it would be cut off from Israel. You will not be part of Israel no more. That's it, terminate him. So I'm saying that this is the meaning of this applies to the meaning of the new covenant. Israel was no longer going to be solely priests, spread the word about God, but Gentiles are not going to be part of. This is the meaning of you're going to be cut off from the people. It means the old assignment where Israel is only going to be the priest. that's over now. That's at least that's how I explain it. But it's
So
very.
this,
Go ahead.
oh yeah, I was going to say like, well, gold was what was in the temple, but then when Jesus came, he became the temple because he said, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll rise it up." So he became the temple himself. He was anointed with frankincense and myrrh as a baby, but then just before he died, remember the woman washed his feet with her hair and anointed him with oil. Is that kind of all interconnected from beginning to end?
Uh, yeah, from his birth, but I don't know what oil they use
Mhm.
in the last
Mhm.
when they wash him with I can't remember the oil they use, but that is
Mm.
how important this oil are, because they came, all three of them were in the temple. So you can look at it like when the wise man came and gave God this, it means the temple was about to destroy the second temple because Israel didn't hear the first time. They told him, "You're gonna leave the land and let the land rest." This is what God told him in Leviticus. They didn't hear, and they tried to rebuild the temple. And the ark was already gone. So when the wise man gave Jesus this thing, it was a signal. Because all of these things are found in the temple. So to me, I explained that this was the first prediction in the temple. The second temple was going to be destroyed, and Israel was no longer solely responsible for spreading the word about God. The Gentiles are now included, and because this is what it ended up in the New Testament. The New Testament is a new covenant, as what we call it. Yeah, but that's kind of like in the area
Hmm.
where this is how I'm discussing in the book.
You kind of see like threes everywhere. Like remember, Jesus called the 12, but then he had the Peter, James, and John, which was like the inner three, and of course 12 is divisible into three. Did you start to see connections all over the place
Yeah,
like that?
yeah, yeah. Peter was really important. The difference between Peter and Paul from the rest of the apostles was they were opposite attract. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And when Jesus came back after the crucifixion and showed himself to Peter, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" 3 times. Now, when Peter had a dream
Mm-hmm.
while he was sitting on the roof, Now, this is really important. This dream was really important because it involved the Romans, because this was the beginning of the spread to the Roman of the knowledge. The plan God already had for the Roman Empire was to collapse. This began here when Peter had a dream. Peter had a dream on the roof 3 times about the food, the unclean food that he was supposed to eat. And then God told him, there are men coming for you, and you're supposed to go with them. You know how many men there were? 3 of them. So Peter went with them. So these are kind of little things that come up, throughout. It's scattered throughout the Bible. And then Paul, Paul when he was blind for how many days? 3 days. And Paul was an opposite attract. That's the difference between Paul, Peter, and the rest of the apostles, because God had listed them their difference, their former lives. Just like Peter was a negative because he denied Jesus 3 times. Then he became a positive when he said he loved Jesus 3 times. Paul was the same. Paul was a negative because he prosecuted Christians, and he became a positive when he became an apostle. So those two are really important because uh, the authors listed their personalities. Nobody else but those two. Nobody else but those two. They were negative. They have what you call opposite attract personality. Characteristics, and those two set up the fall of the Roman Empire. So it began there with a dream by Peter. So there's all kinds of things scattered throughout the Bible that I didn't. This is it's in the book. You know, uh, What else? The other three that was really important. Oh yeah, the Ark of the Covenant. The later covenant had three. There were three people there. There's two opposite cherubim facing each other, and then God showed up in the middle of it. That thing was monumental, because I end up. That's how I ended up identifying the tree of life was through those symbols. So in the book, I've identified the tree of knowledge, tree of life, Garden of Eden, and the Ark of the Covenant. That's just a part of the book. I found them as I tracked the atom in the Bible. But the atom, God left the atom in the Bible, all over the Bible, and all the way up to the New Testament. These are all samples in the threes of the atom's particles, and I wasn't looking for them. I accidentally found the identity, discovered the identity of these things as I tracked the atom in the Bible. But that's
Well, like when you talked. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
But like when you like when you talked about the three wise men representing the expansion to the Gentiles to bring the knowledge of God to the world. Well, the three wise men were, not Israelites. And a lot of people believe they were Zoroastrian from Persia. And the Zoroastrian religion is very similar to Judaism. So they might have been classified by a lot of the Jews as righteous Gentiles. I don't know if you ever saw, maybe the wise men were themselves, they were righteous Gentiles, but not part of Israel. And it's kind of a picture of where Christ would take everything, bringing the Gentiles in, especially through Paul, to spread the light of God's truth to people. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't I didn't go that far into because we're gonna end up writing, making assumptions. The book is more. I'm submitting the book as it's like a college paper. I'm making claims and then I bring in scientific things to support my claims. So the wise men, though, the story is bigger than what I'm telling you. The importance of the East, where they came from, is really, really crucial because it has to do with the brain as well. The brain is divided in two sections, and one of those. Remember what happened to Cain, right? Now I'm making claim that the brain is a Garden of Eden, but Cain moved to the east of Eden. If the brain was if the Garden of Eden was the brain, what does this mean? It was a power boat too, and this is where the wise men came. He came from the east, So these two links are really important. It's a lot more. It's a little bit bigger conversation, bigger explanation. But Cain was more than a murderer, more than a killer. Cain was the first person who built a city, on earth. And that indicates that Cain, there was something special about Cain. He had a brain that was a lot more advanced than the people of his generation, So after all, he was in, if you read the script very carefully, his introduction from is separate from how his brother Seth was introduced. Cain was introduced by Eve as a man acquired from the Lord. But when they listed Seth in a family tree, in Adam's family tree, they listed Seth as a man created in the image of his father. So those two are very important. How I found them in the Bible are very important because they spoke a lot. They Cain was a little bit different. I don't think, but I'll leave that for you to discover the book if you're curious. But this is like the link between Cain and where the wise men came from is important, because these men end up just God call him, the scripture call him as wise men. I don't know where the most important thing, of the connection of the wise brain and our scientists came later and called the brain, the new brain, as a smart brain. You know, the connection between these wise men that, you know, they weren't there was, I don't know how many wise men were there, but there was only 3 gifts. I know people call it 3 wise men because there was 3 gifts. But there's really scriptures that does not say how many wise men came. It could be 10 or 20, but they only brought 3 gifts. You know, so that's my little contribution to the conversation. Yes, I know. I am one of those people who have always, I had too many questions, but in the back of my mind, I've always known there's a truth, because all you got to do is witness, see the trees, see how these things interact, you know, how they, you know, give us gas, the oxygen that we breathe. It's simple stuff. So I know there's always a God. There's somewhere in the back of my mind, I know there was somebody that designed these things, you know. It's just a matter of collecting the evidence and present it and find your own evidence, you know. So all I did was find my evidence, answer my own questions, and I'm sharing those questions with you guys. I know I try to introduce the book to Christians. Christians say, "Oh, we believe by faith. We believe it's true." Sure, you know. The problem is a lot of kids, the young generation, don't believe in that stuff. They're more prone to go believe in science because scientists are telling them that these are facts. Now, this book here is going to change that argument, a lot of these arguments, you know, because I know a lot of you who know, you're going to know that if what I'm claiming that the atom is found in the Bible, you know, it's going to change the argument. It's going to change a lot of arguments, you know. It changes a bunch of stuff, you know. And furthermore, like there's a case about emotions. You know, that's one of the biggest arguments today. The ongoing arguments today is whether emotions have been hardwired into our body or we learn from the environment. I'm claiming, you know, God had recorded emotions as hardwired into our body. It's just a matter of developing them, but they were hardwired in our bodies. Even emotion comes in threes. In threes. So I leave that argument for you guys to discover the book. But you know, it's good to believe by faith. But man, you'll be shocked how beautiful God designed, how beautiful God left it, how He designed us, how He made us what we are today, and how the knowledge that we have today, how God, the tools that God used and recorded in the Bible, how we are supposed to get knowledge is absolutely stunning. The Ark of the Covenant, you know, I end this with this, because it's a claim that's in the book. You discover in the book, if you're going there, that the land God gave Israel was replaced. Another people, another tribe, recreated the Ark of the Covenant. And you all know that the Ark was designed by God. There's no way anybody can redesign it without God's approval. And that's exactly what happened. Another tribe redesigned the Ark of the Covenant. And that's a land. God replaced the old land that He promised Israel. God replaced that old land with the new land, and that land belongs to the Gentiles. So that's your thank you for your time. We've been listening. Thank you for your time. And the book's available on Amazon.
Have you ever wondered whether the Bible was compatible with a near-death experience? In my book, Heaven's Truth, the parallels between the Bible and the near-death experience, your faith will be strengthened while you support this channel. In Heaven's Truth, you will learn about near-death experiences and other similar experiences in the Bible. Support for the Bible contained in NDEs, a central theme that runs through both the Bible and NDEs, how the NDE brings the Bible to life for these modern times, evidence for both the Bible and the NDE, and much more. Great book. Spillers does an excellent job weaving the relationship between NDEs and the scriptures. 5 stars on Amazon, available on Amazon.